What's up, everyone? Thralls of Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
Miller.
Rin.
Sredlord.
Jammin Jon.
And we are back with a discography ranking. This time, we are going to go over all of the studio full-lengths from none other than the godfathers of grind themselves, Napalm Death.
Woo!
Woo!
73 albums.
Yeah.
No, that's
73.
No.
That's just one album full of songs.
16 albums, 73 songs on each album.
I've been a longtime fan. In fact, I definitely remember the distinct moment when I first heard them, and we're going to get to that because it was very special because that really kind of opened up the grind floodgates.
Did you know that you can make napalm in the comfort of your own home? Description below.
Very wordy, lots of chemicals. So this band has a very long origin story, and I did not realize how many member changes had happened before the band's very first album.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have picked this.
Yeah, well, no, I probably still would have picked it, but man, dude, I had no idea.
He wouldn't have picked to front this review.
Oh, no, I still would have. I love this band, and they're insane. And yeah, the whole start of it is insane because we're getting started as teenagers here. This band formed in Meridian near Coventry in May of 1981 by Nick Bullen and Miles Ratledge as teens. They were heavily inspired by the anarcho-punk scene, namely the band Crass, and in December of 1981 all the way to January of 1982, they had their first lineup. Miles Ratledge was on drums, Nick Bullen was on bass and vocals, and Simon Oppenheimer / Akin Sir O.
Is that German for 8 hymens?
I don't know. It's
Multiple
octopus hymen.
It's multi-hymen.
They have them.
Multi-hymen.
Lots of them.
This is multi-hymen.
Well, he was the guitarist. And immediately in January of 82, we already had some lineup changes. Graham Robinson joined in on bass. Oppenheimer left in August of 82. He was replaced by Daryl Fedesky, who exited in October of 82. Robertson switched to guitars, and Finbar Quinn joined on bass and backing vocals. Now, through all of these lineup changes, they were playing a shitload of shows and recorded 4 demos between 82 and 83 before entering hiatus in 83 because
It's time to take a break.
they were burnt out from writing, playing, and, well, I mean, it's grindcore, or at this point it was just punk. Either way, it's exhausting.
Being 20's a
They
bitch.
probably had no idea at that point who was actually in the band, so they had to take a cat.
Nigel, Ian, come on in.
Yeah.
The waiting list.
I believe during this time, I think in 83, they only played one show, and I believe it was a benefit, and it was with a different vocalist. Now, during this hiatus is when Nick Bullen met one Justin Broderick. They pretty much had a mutual interest in this kind of underlying weird scene that was kind of coming up with like heavy post-punk bands like Ambix, Killing Joke, and Throbbing Gristle.
Oh, how they know that's what I used to call my penis.
So Nick ended up joining Justin's project, which was called Final, in 83. So during this time, Bullen was actually playing in Final, but in 1985, Napalm Death officially reformed in a concert as a 4-piece, adding Damian Arrington as their second guitarist, but he was more or less just a fill-in at the moment. This was also Final's final show. Justin Broderick ended up joining Napalm Death after this. And through 85, they played yet again a ton of shows. They had a new bassist join, Peter Shaw, because they have insane turnover. Now, during this time, they recorded their pretty famous Hatred Surge demo in 85. And during this time, of course, bands bicker, and Nick and Justin wanted to keep pushing the extreme sound, while Miles and Peter really weren't big on that, so they ended up exiting.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
And they recruited a local drummer by the name of Mick Harris. And they went back to being just a 3-piece. Now, they played a ton of shows once again, all the way through 86, and recorded their 6th and 7th demos. From Enslavement to Obliteration and Scum, those names sound really familiar, and believe me, we're going to get to them. Now, Nick Bullen left the band in 86 because he didn't like the musical direction. Jim Whiteley joins on bass. Justin Broderick left the band to play drums in Head of David, so they recruited one Shane Embry and Frank Healy, who was only in the band till 87. And at this point, before the first album is even out, they have no original members.
Did you guys get all that?
Makes sense.
Now, Frank left to join Cerebral Fix. Bill Steer ended up joining the band. He was already in Carcass at this point, but he wanted to help out his friends, and they got one obscure vocalist who was just kind of a friend of the band, one Lee Dorian. And now we can get on to their debut album, which is very confusing in itself, Scum. This came out in 1987 on Earache Records, and it is the tale of two sides. Each side is a different lineup. The only consistent member is Mick Harris on drums. Literally, they were recorded almost a year apart. Now, this is my number 13. It's a weird album, namely because of the two lineups. I only really like the first half. The first half is good. The first lineup is pretty solid. Good riffs. It's pretty much the budding scene of grind right there. Scum is a great track. Siege of Power has killer riffs. And I Love You Suffer for the novelty that it is. The world's shortest song.
I've seen it live.
Yep, seen it live too.
Twice.
They don't warn you when they play it.
No.
They just do it.
This is my number 13. I mean, it is what it is. It's the start of grind. It's, this is more punk, but you can hear him, at least peppered throughout the record, it's more punk. But you can start to hear the beginning of what became grind. And again, I Love You Suffer. That's such a fun song. And although it's kind of a garbage recording, I really like Human Garbage.
I mean, it seems fitting. I like the production on the first half. Second half, no.
And I love the vocals on Parasite, though. It sounds like anybody when they're drunk.
That's the whole first two albums.
Yeah.
I mean, these albums are... how you make these songs is you go 1, 2, 3, 4, blast beat.
Next song.
Print. I had it at 16, obviously. But Success, I like that song. That song's got a really cool groove that builds up to the last part of the song. I dug that, but it's, I don't know, it's just nonsensical.
You had to start somewhere.
Like, yeah, you got to start somewhere. And this coming from someone who likes Napalm Death. And I dig the band, but I don't dig this.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with Napalm Death before this discography ranking. I've never been a gigantic fan. I'm not really into grindcore, so for me, Scum was 16. No.
Sure.
I ranked this at number 1, and I'll tell you why. Are the songs good? Not really. Is it recorded well? Absolutely not. Is it cohesive? Not in the slightest. Does it make sense? No, not particularly. But it is the birth, a snapshot in time, several times, of the birth of a genre. And nobody really ever did this kind of stuff before, and maybe if they didn't, they wouldn't have.
I mean, I think Repulsion's in the conversation, but their album didn't come out till later, even though they recorded it before. But yeah, I mean, this is pioneering as hell.
Yeah, so basically I put it number 1 to get it out of the way, and we won't talk about it anymore.
So after touring on Scum, they returned to the studio in July of 1988 with Shane Embry on bass. He actually joined after Scum. They actually had the other bassists on there. And Shane is now the longest tenured member, by the way, throughout all the albums. He is on all the other ones. So,
way to go.
Yeah, way to hang in there, because turnover rate, at least to a certain point. So this would be his recording debut, and, well, on September 16th of 1988, they released the follow-up, From Enslavement to Obliteration. This also came out on Earache Records, back when Earache Records was a reliable source of all things extreme. Not so much now. But I have this at number 8. I saw this as an improvement, and honestly, listening to this album again, this is pretty much the blueprint of all things grind now. Like, every grindcore band has probably cited this album as a big influence. Nawsome, Rotten Sound, Brutal Truth. This is pretty much the blueprint, and it's pretty much condensed songs again. Bill Steer is not playing stuff you would associate with Bill Steer now, but he still throws out some interesting riffs. The punk energy is awesome on here. I love Mick Harris's drum work. It's just frantic, but it's kind of controlled chaos. And honestly, I can't stand Lee Dorian's vocals on any other release except for this one, just because it's like, well, he's just yelling incoherently and making noises, and somehow it's endearing. The rest of the time when he's doing spooky Lee Dorian, I can't. I love Cathedral, but I can't with him. But yeah, I dig this album. It's kind of middle of the pack now just because they released a lot of other killer stuff. But yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same area of the ranking. I put this at 9. It's a little more... We figured it out than Scum.
Yeah.
Along the same lines, though. Frantic, nutty, slightly recorded better.
Slightly.
Songs. Slightly, just slightly. Yeah, they're getting their crumpets aligned.
I mean, they're still like super young at this point, and you know, they're kids. They're just pissed off kids, and like, do you know how to play? Ah, kinda.
Yeah.
Bang the shit out of it.
No.
Just hit it.
No. I also didn't really like this album either. This is number 15 for me. This is an improvement on what Scum was, but I still didn't really like what Scum was in the first place, so it trailed right behind for me.
This is my number 14. The mix still isn't the greatest, and the songs are getting better because they are becoming more defined as, you know, what they're looking to be. And this is a definitely more grindy album than Scum. Actually, more of a grindy album than some other records later down the line. But the mix kills it for me. Retreat to Nowhere sounds like somebody has food poisoning.
Unchallenged Hate. I like that song. It's a banger.
The Curse, it kind of has a darker, doomy feel to it. I mean, I'm going to listen to all these records again, but this is lower on my list.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this album either. 15 is where I rank this. And there was just a few things that were just like missed opportunities for me or letdowns. Like I saw A Man's World and I was like, oh, James Brown, they're going to do some
No way.
It's A Man's World.
You don't want to hear Lee
And I'm
Dorian
like,
do that cover.
I would
You
be
really
interested.
expected that?
Oh, I would thought, what a fucking like left ball thing for them to do. Hell yeah!
I want you
And
to
then
report
it's
for a
not.
drug test after that. Immediately.
Whatever.
You
I'm
better
into
test
it.
positive.
I'm into extreme. If they could take that song and make it a grindcore thing, I'm all for it. But it wasn't, and it still sucks. The vocals are what kills me on the album, really. And it's supposedly like political and social and had all these important things, but you can't understand anything. So what the hell's the point of putting all the time and effort
liner
into
notes.
doing this if you can't understand? And
You sound your age right now.
yeah,
That was...
I know I do, but
I
always
like it
said
either.
I don't. I'm not a big fan of
I'm not
like
a big
death
fan
metal
either.
vocals,
I
like
think-
in that sense. But there was Think for a Minute was another one where I was like missed opportunity, because if they have these short ass songs anyway, and the song's called Think for a Minute, you would think that the song would be 1 fucking minute,
Yeah.
and that would be awesome. It would be like, but it's not. So missed opportunity there. Display to Me, I like that song.
Yes.
That is more focused to me. It's more structure. The vocals are better. It's got defined parts. It's not just wall of sound type stuff. Annoying wall of sound stuff.
Noise.
Yeah, noise.
Noise.
I'm not into noise.
Noise wall.
Sometimes, but not in this sense, because, like you said, Napalm Death has killer stuff. They have
yeah.
way better stuff than this.
So not too long after From Enslavement to Obliteration, they actually went in and recorded an EP called Mentally Murdered. Now this actually saw a bit of a shift in the sound more towards death metal, which was not to the liking of Lee Dorian. He didn't want to do that, so he left and ended up forming Cathedral not too long after that. And Bill Steer unfortunately had to leave because he wanted to focus primarily on Carcass, which... yes. So during this time, they recruited Terrorizer guitarist Jesse Pintado, and got a young and budding vocalist from One Benediction named Barney Greenway. Now they toured with just this lineup for a little while, and then they picked up second guitarist Mitch Harris from Righteous Pigs, which adds a lot of confusing because you have a Mick Harris in there already. Now for this next album, they went all the way to Morris Sound Studios in Tampa, Florida to work with one Scott Burns. And on July 1st, 1990, they released Harmony Corruption. Again, on Earache Records, and this is a giant departure in sell because this is pretty much Napalm Death's lone death metal album. Almost all the grindcore elements are sort of stripped away on this in favor of just big death metal riffs. Barney's vocals, well, I mean, he was singing in Benediction, and yeah, his low growls are just huge on there. The guitar tone's massive, and it's kind of muddy, but it's heavier than hell. But these songs have always stuck out to me just because this is a very different album, and I have this at number 4. I'm a huge death metal fan as well, in case anyone was fuzzy on that.
Gospel. gospel music.
I love this album. There are great hooky songs in this that definitely shows off some songwriting maturity. Unfit Earth, Suffer the Children, live staple till this day. I mean, you will hear that almost every time you see Napalm Death.
Yeah.
Inner Incineration, I love the fact that before the blast beat section, he just yells, blast! And then they blast.
I mean, that's follow directions. That's
Yeah.
good.
I can't blast on command, but if you give me about 30 seconds, I can blast.
I'm not going to give you 30 seconds. I'm
counter
going to
blast.
give you to the count of no. Now, we also had some Florida alum that actually showed up on there with John Tardy and Glenn Benton on Unfit Earth. And there were a lot of cries of sellout on this one, which I still don't understand that because you shifted from one extreme to another extreme. It wasn't as though you're going to make huge radio bucks on this album, because no. But this is an awesome album, and, well, who else had this ranked higher?
I had this ranked high as well. This is my number 4. A Napalm Death album that I really like. Yeah. I think you already talked about Unfit Earth. That's maybe my favorite song on there, but I also really like If the Truth Be Known. It's kind of a meat and potatoes banger there. Suffer the Children. Hiding Behind. I like that song a lot. And Mind Snare. It grabbed me probably more because of the death metal vibe, but yeah, I dug it a lot. And number 4.
Number 3 for me, I like the death metal more than the grindcore. Songs have a point. They have structure, little groove, because they're not the whole time.
Yeah.
Morrissey is not as good as Morrisound.
True.
That's true. Fucking Vision Conquest. Yeah, this is. I want this death on my napalm. You take gasoline.
So I had this ranked a little bit lower. I had this ranked at number 12, which is weird because this is a death metal album. It is my least favorite vocal performance, though. I don't ever say this about bands because I hate this stereotype, but he sounds like legit Cookie Monster on this album. And I don't ever say that about bands, but I mean, Cookie Monster is one of my favorite Blue Muppets, so that's a good thing. But I think the vocal performance on this was pretty awful. The music was sweet, but like it just fell a little bit lower because I couldn't get into it.
See, and I thought the vocals were like you could actually understand some of the words now, and I was like, oh, there's words to this.
Right,
it's not
right.
just like blurting out a bunch of shit. And so I appreciate it, but I still had it at 13. Pretty low just because I like a bunch of their other stuff more. Harmony Corruption is a good album. Hiding Behind, it was a bonus track, I think, on the CD version.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the
Deluxe
version I have.
The middle part breakdown, it's very reminiscent of like Schizophrenia. I love that sound, that thrashier death stuff. Unfit Earth, really enjoyed the vocals on that, but that's probably because Benton and Tardy. So, but yeah, it's a good album, but
It's a little hampered by the production.
Yeah.
I like Scott Burns'
despite it
production.
being from there, I was like, it's not as good as his other stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. So maybe he was just like, at this point, he was full go though. 90, he was like, yeah, I'm sure he was doing a ton of stuff, and he was just like,
Oh yeah.
cranking it out.
Yeah.
you
Oh,
know?
at this point, he was the death metal guy.
Yeah, I could almost see him like, okay, this is a preset for Morbid Angel. I'll just use that; it'll be fine.
They're British. They don't know the difference.
Yeah, they don't know the difference.
Metric system.
yeah.
Once they get on the plane, they're never coming back.
These numbers are different. Oh, don't worry, it's fine.
It's a metric standard difference thing.
Hybrid.
Yeah.
Quid.
Now, they recorded an EP called Mass Appeal Madness, and during this time, Mick Harris left the band because he didn't like the musical direction, and he kind of cited the whole death metal thing as selling out, so that was kind of an internal conflict there. I don't see it. But he was the last original member from Scum, so now we are really starting new. And during this time, they brought in one drummer, Danny Herrera, who is still there, and he brings a very different style. He's more of a complete drummer versus
Dude, he's a
Mick
monster.
being super aggressive all the time. So this time they chose to tap one Colin Richardson to produce their new album, and pretty much did all the recording between February and March of 1992. And on June 23rd, 1992, they released Utopia Vanished. Once again, still on Earache. And this is pretty much an amalgamation of the early stuff and Harmony Corruption.
And where they're headed.
Pretty much death grind.
Yep.
A great blend. You have all the dynamics you have in death metal, but you have the grind attitude. The speed was up in here. Danny Herrera's drum work on here, instant upgrade. He is doing all sorts of crazy stuff. I think Barney sounds a little bit more clear, and I like the production on here. Colin Richardson did a really good job. And this is before he was really getting known for, stuff with Machine Head and Fear Factory. Awesome songs, Christening the Blind, Arianisms, Distorting the Medium. These songs are a little bit shorter, but it's all that condensed anger, and Jesus, dude, the riffs on here are catchier than hell. All the breakdowns you need. This is my number 2. I have loved this album ever since I heard it. I think this was like the 3rd Napalm Death album I ever picked up, and it is still glorious to this day.
I'm at number 2 as well. What he said. Pretty much, yeah.
The gist of that.
Yeah.
Wrap that up.
It's, yeah.
I'm at number 1. The mix is great. I love the fact that they're really honing in on the grind sound now, and the musicianship across the board is tightening. They have a great idea of where they're going and what they're doing. The song Idiosyncratic is a jammer, upward and uninterested. I love that song. Discordance, I kind of thought...
It's a weird track.
Yeah, it's like something Ministry would do.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's cool. Like, the whole record is great. I've listened to it 5-6 times, and I
didn't have this ranked that high. Once again, I don't really like grind, so I didn't really care for it. So when they're honing in on their grind, I'm not honing in on that vibe. So it wasn't the worst for me, but it was number 13, and yeah, I'm just not a grind person, so this album just did not grab me by the cojones.
I'm in the same boat. It's 14 for me. Yeah, the production is better and the musicianship is a little bit better, but it's like they're like trying to figure out where they're going next, and they're just kind of like doing a bunch of stuff, and there's nothing that stood out really to me about it. And Christening of the Blind, the breakdown on that is badass. That song is sweet, but it wasn't like there was nothing I grabbed onto in this album. So 14.
So much like always, Napalm Death toured heavily on this, and during this time they actually released another fun EP, Nazi Punks Fuck Off. This is an EP based on the Dead Kennedys cover, and there was a reason behind it. I guess their time in South Africa, they ran into a lot of resistance from white nationalist groups because they didn't like the song Arianisms or anything else that Barney said about them. So that pretty much inspired that, and all the proceeds of that EP went to donate to anti-fascist organizations. Now, they went back to the studio, this time in England, to tap one Pete Coleman as their producer. And this would be a very different album. So on May 31st, 1994, they released Fear, Emptiness, Despair. This is another giant shift in the style of the band. They were more influenced by bands like Helmet and Soundgarden, mixed with like Discharge and Doom. They wanted to create something a little bit more groovy, and around this time, groove metal kind of became like a bigger thing.
Yeah.
Now, this is pretty much the point where I caught up with them, because the song, the opening track, Twist the Knife Slowly, was on the Mortal Kombat soundtrack. And I remembered hearing that, and again, that instant, like, whoa, what is that?
Now you have my attention, Kano.
Get over here.
The wild drumming on this album, and despite it being more groove-oriented, it is heavier than hell. The production is thick and heavy. Now, this is Shane's least favorite album, I guess. He said the production was kind of a nightmare, and they didn't like the studio interference, or at least the label interference, because Earache was kind of pushing them to be more accessible. It was like, how accessible do you want a band called Napalm Death to be?
Yeah, no shit.
Right?
Sitcom theme.
I mean, you changed the logo a little bit. It looks like it's not made out of bones. But this is a pretty solid album. I have it ranked at number 10. It just fell a little bit lower because I like other albums more. But I think in terms of their groovier era, which we're getting into, this is the best work they did. It's heavy. It's just hostile as hell. And those interesting alternative influences really come out, and they still keep it very Napalm Death.
I had it at number 11. Where Nick thought the mix was rich and full, I thought it was still a little bit thin. Not a big deal. Songs like Remain Nameless, More Than Meets the Eye, those are both jammer songs. Dude, the drum work in Armageddon ×7, nasty. Yeah, and again, this just felt kind of like at the midpoint, because there were albums I liked a lot better. But I mean, still a good sound.
I put this at number 8. I liked finally being able to have a little bit of melody and a little bit of groove.
Yeah.
This was a refreshing change to me.
I remember when you told me, it was like, I found one I liked.
At number 8, The songs I don't think anyone have talked about that are my two favorite on here is the song Hung and More Than Meets the Eye.
Hung rules.
I think More Than Meets the Eye is very creative for them.
Transformers.
Robots in disguise and More Than Meets the Eye. But yeah, I thought this was a nice change for me, and I enjoyed this album. So, yep, I believe number 8 all day.
Still had some grindy stuff. Played Rages. Yeah.
I had this at number 7. I liked the groove. Yeah, had some dynamics. Grind, blast beat, but give me some chug. A little bit of chug spritzed down there. Never hurt anybody. Barney. It's not your fault.
Can't call you and scream.
This good stuff. Why don't I go? Fair enough.
I had it at number 6, as I dig this album. Again, like you said, Mortal Kombat Twisted Knife. First time I heard them, when I bought the Mortal Kombat soundtrack, because that was when soundtracks were viable things to buy, you know?
Yep.
Check us out on Real Metal.
And Remain Nameless, that bridge, that guitar, like scale riff guitar. Oh, dude, that's so freaking sweet, man. I love that.
Jesse and Mitch worked well together.
Yeah, the guitars are awesome on this. And man, Plague Rages, it's one of my favorites. That groovy first riff just gets me every time. It's one of my favorite Napalm Death songs. But yeah, number 6, I dug this album. Really liked it.
Now, this new sound was kind of driving a wedge between the band and namely Barney. He didn't like all the outside influences and literally felt that they were losing what made them special. You know, that sort of grind sound was starting to dissipate in favor of, I think, what studio execs wanted. But they powered through, and they released a short EP called Greed Killing, and went on to record the follow-up in 95, once again with Colin Richardson, and on January 30th, 1996, they released Diatribes. This is my least favorite album. This is number 16, obviously. This is too polished, too groove-oriented, but I mean, I like groove, but this sounds like the best album Helmet didn't write. And Barney sounds so out of place on here. There's not a lot on here I really got into. There's almost sort of rapped vocals on Cold Forgiveness and Curse to Crawl. Some of the riffing I think is really dull. And again, this really clean production. It's not Napalm Death. They need grit. They need dirt on there. Yeah, corrosive elements, glimpse into genocide. There's little bits of that old Napalm Death that I liked on there, but for the most part, I didn't want to continue listening to it when I was listening to it because I was like, I'm going to come back to this one. I haven't listened to it in years. Maybe it's grown on me. It hasn't. It's still my least favorite. So yeah.
I also had it at number 16. It's all right, but it's not Napalm Death. Like, it's just not. When you go after it, you know, when you skip a couple records ahead, it sounds like they did in the beginning, and like there's this whole, just a couple records that sound not like Napalm Death. It reminds me of Machine Head's The Burning Red. I mean,
yeah, that's a good comparison.
Parts of like Glimpse into Genocide are cool. Ripe for the Breaking sounds like Decapitated in their prime, but with like new metal influence. It's what was popular for metal at that time period, unfortunately. And unless you were, you know, Pantera, you weren't releasing decent groove metal.
Being an extreme metal band in the late 90s was rough.
Yeah. Like the song Cursed to Crawl is a prime example of like a shitty 90s new metal sound.
Yeah.
Corrosive Elements is a decent song, but it's still a little bit off. I would have liked this album maybe if it wasn't labeled as Napalm Death. That's my spiel.
You guys are crazy. This is incredibly not that good. I had it at number 14. There is really nothing on here that really drew me anything. This was quite a stale listen for me. Nothing memorable. Yeah. I will never listen to this album ever again.
Yep, I'm not gonna.
It just kind of blended in the pack. Like that was the main thing. And Napalm shouldn't blend. They should explode the pack.
Yeah.
Into little bits and chunks.
Yeah. You should never release an album just to release an album, even if it is contractual. Fucking do that to it.
Sorry. Where'd that come from?
Sorry, we still want press kits.
Not from you, Eric. You go to hell and you die.
I put this at 8 mainly because it was like a groove metal band getting into grind. Danny Herrera's drumming is what saves the record. The riffs are more, I wouldn't say stale, but simpler. But the
Generic.
but the way he drums around it changes. It makes the song as a whole better.
He's a great drummer. He really is.
And that's what I liked about it. I'm a groove guy, so yeah. But 8's a good number, I guess.
I had it at 8. And,
See, it's a good number.
Yeah, it's a good number.
Ocho.
But Curse to Crawl, it isn't Napalm Death
That one's
at all.
That one's.
But
Yeah.
I love that drum and bass part. I'm a sucker for drum and bass, though, like those breakdowns like that. Again, not Napalm Death. But I ranked it 8 because at this point, Napalm Death doesn't even know what the fuck Napalm Death is.
That's true.
You know?
Yeah, that's true.
So I didn't look at it as they had to be in this little box. It's just an album that they're going to do because the last albums had numerous changes and sound changes and engineers and people. And, like I said, they don't even know what the fuck they are.
They never got a DJ, though.
No, thank God. But Corrosive Elements is my favorite song on here. But that is the most Napalm Death sounding song on here.
And Barney Greenway never had gold dreads.
Yeah.
Who am I talking about?
Actually, he had just blonde, spiky hair.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, he's not my favorite.
I dig this album and I will listen to it again in the future.
Back on the shelf it goes for me.
Right back in the other 8,000 CDs.
So the divide pretty much furthered after this, and in 1996, Barney was actually taken out of the lineup due to creative differences. Now, Barney wanted to keep doing music, even though he was kind of jaded by this whole experience, so he joined Extreme Noise Terror, which another grind band from the whole English scene, and recorded now with them Damage 381. But his removal from Napalm Death kind of made him hesitant about joining another band full time, so he just did that album. Now, it's interesting that the old vocalist from Extreme Noise Terror actually joined Napalm Death for a little bit, Phil Vane. And he was going to do some live shows and record with them, but he never quite fit, and he didn't have the same energy, and this pretty much led the rest of the band to get a hold of Barney and reconcile and talk to him again. It's like, listen, we need you back. You have become the voice of Napalm Death, and people really like you. And he wanted to be assured that they were actually going to start writing some heavy music again. And I guess Shane played him a little bit of the stuff they were working on, and Barney was like, okay, this is better. So they got back with Colin Richardson, and they also brought in a young budding engineer by the name of Andy Sneap to work with them.
Nope, never ever heard of him.
So on June 3rd, 1997, they released Inside the Torn Apart. This is better. This is my number 15. It's still groove oriented. It's still trying for maybe more accessibility to a different market, but it does have some heavier moments. It does sound a bit more inspired, but not much. The production is solid, though too clean for Napalm Death once again. Some of the energy's back, not all of it.
There's a lot of disdain in your voice for Napalm Death.
I know. I like all their albums, but this is not a favorite of mine
Jeez,
either.
you can tell the ones he ranks.
This
low.
is better Diatribes, which Diatribes, we went there. Reflect on Conflict, Low Points. The single, Breed to Breathe, is not bad for that style. I thought it was actually pretty good, but I mean, overall, this is just a better version of Diatribes for me.
So I guess just dive on that train too. It's number 15. It's better than Diatribes, kind of. Not really. It really it's almost like they repeated Diatribes, but they threw in a little bit more pizzazz, like the drum work and section, the riffs and prelude are nasty. Low Point's got a little bit of grind to it.
Yeah.
A little bit. I still can't get past the Burning Red vibe. Just can't.
I mean, the cover, similar.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not great, it's not terrible, but it's not good.
I was about 2/3 of the way down. Coming from a non-Napalm Death fan before this discography ranking, I didn't think it was that bad. I put it at number 11, but it really isn't that much better than Diatribes. It's just slightly better. And the groove metal was definitely more improved. It didn't sound as, cut cloth generic as the first time around, but it still wasn't earth-shatteringly awesome or new. So for me, it definitely wasn't as low as some of the others, but 11.
It wasn't a full-on new metal album, so I'm thankful for that.
Right, exactly. It wasn't Diatribes.
Number 11 for me as well. It's 2 ones put together for the 7th album, and why not?
I had this at number 4. I really like this album. It's groove and it's decent production. Drum work is great. This album was like Wayne Static heard this. It's like, yeah. And then 2 years later, you know. But inside the Torn Apart, I mean, that song alone is like his like like this is what we're gonna do, guys. This is this song. Which is it's fine. I enjoy Static X too. Out of the new metal stuff, Static X was the one that I enjoyed.
I enjoy Wayne and his Static.
Indispose, a great song, and that is an example of a song that can be super chaotic and noisy and stuff and still make sense because it has defined parts and it does a great job of keeping tension. And I think that's what they were going for in the first 2 albums, but they just didn't hit it. They got it with this one. Lifeless Alarm, I didn't care for too much. It's the ender, it just didn't work. It's slower. It would have been a cool opener, cut down, but that was the one I didn't care for in this album. If Symptoms Persist, very Dino Sarceras kind of sounding, Fear Factory sounding.
I mean,
which I'm also a big Dino fan and Fear Factory fan, so. Number 4.
So they didn't waste much time getting back into the studio, once again with Colin Richardson, and this would be his final one with the band. Now, Embry and Richardson, I guess, butted heads in terms of the direction of this album. Embry wanted to get back to the grind. He wanted to get back to, like, again, the old stuff that really kind of made them stand out versus what they were doing now. But Colin had other ideas, so it was a little bit of a war zone. So on October 26th of 1998, they released Words from the Exit Wound. This is my number 14. We're moving up. We're moving up a little bit. This is the last one on Earache, and believe me, that split is going to be ugly. I like the fact that this opens right away with something more intense. It doesn't scream, a single like Greed Killing or, Breed to Breathe. It has more of the tenacity back. The production, less clean. A little bit more grit on it, and it kind of helped lift it up a little bit. There's some interesting clean vocals on here too, which I believe might be a first for Barney, which his clean vocals are more or less just a dry chant. They're effective for what they are, but I like the Barney. Blast beats are featured a little bit more, especially Ulterior Exterior, which is one of my favorite tracks on here. The Infiltrator, Cleanse Impure. This album is getting better in terms of, aging for me, but it's still near the bottom because they wrote a lot of much better albums.
And Nick hates Napalm Death.
I don't hate them. I love them.
I also have 14 more Napalm Death songs for you. Devouring Depraved. There's a good tune there. The good stuff is good. The bad stuff is not that great. Whatever.
Sounds good.
Sounds
Cool.
To me, this was a half step down, actually, from Inside the Torn Apart. The clean vocals, I was not feeling it. It sounds split. It sounds like there was a split in direction here, and this album didn't really do much for me. Firmly putting it at number 12 on my list.
I had this at number 7. This would have been a good record to put after Fear, Emptiness.
I will agree with that. I will definitely agree with that.
We could have just tossed Diatribes and Inside the Torn Apart out the window, and this would have been the next in line for the progression of their sound. The Infiltrator sets a good pace for the album. The mix finally has some of the heft back in it that they had lost. The vocals are a little dry, but that's not really a big deal. There's some hooks in these songs. The hook in Repression Out of Uniform is really cool. That little dissonant melody is neat. But I think this is where they started to pick back up with what their sound would progress from at this point. So that's my take.
I had this at 3.
3.
I dig this album. I really like it. Next Akin to Chaos. Love the groove in that song. It's badass. Devouring Depraved has a great thrash feel.
I do like that song.
I mentioned that.
Good, yeah.
The None the Wiser, the one with the clean vocal on it. I'm okay. It's not totally awful, so it's different enough, and I'm like, okay, there's something there.
I think it's
and I
weird.
like the corpsey riff. The kind of Cannibal Corpse feel to the riffing, clutching at the barbs. Dude, those riffs hit hard as fuck for me, throwing down a rope, one of my favorite Napalm Death songs.
Yes,
like
I do
period.
like that song.
Skeptic in Perspective. That song, I love that off time. I like those riffs or those melodies that kind of the stumble groove, like, you know, it's like you picture Michael Myers or someone just like stumbling after somebody, you know, it's like a stumble groove type swing beat.
It's got a little off time to it though.
Yeah, it's a little swing to it. I dig it. That's why I like this album, number 3.
So after Words from the Exit Wound, the band had a very nasty split with Earache Records, which, let's be honest, a lot of the old roster of Earache had a nasty split with Earache Records, because they're kind of a bunch of fuckers. And that split would end up kind of carrying over to the subject matter of the next album. Now, they moved over to a small label called Dreamcatcher Records in the UK, and it would be distributed in the US through Spitfire Records, which was mostly known for signing old hair metal bands. Not really the best fit for Napalm Death, but they wanted a full-on return to their grindcore style, and they got the production team of Simon Ethemy and Russ Russell, who you'll get used to hearing his name because he's been the producer with them ever since because they like him. So on September 25th of 2000, they released Enemies of the Music Business. This is my number 9 album. Welcome back. Oh, welcome back, guys. We're not fiddling around with trying to do anything radio accessible. This is them just getting back to the grind, and they are pissed. And man, do they have a hell of a target. They pretty much go after Earache on almost every track. The old logo comes back. The artwork is back to looking really fucked up. There's still a little bit of the groove elements, but they're used more effectively, I think. It's all about being heavy, like the awesome breakdown on Volume of Neglect, especially. Vermin, and they even did a second part to an old song, CS, also known as Conservative Shithead.
Part 2.
Yeah, part 2 from Scum. It was like, well, whatever. We're going to do a part 2, and we're probably going to do it better. And let's be honest, they did.
Electric Boogaloo.
But they sound focused, angrier than hell, and I really dig this album. Yes, thank you.
I did it at number 8. Again, I said it previously, I'll say it again, they could have removed Diatribes and Inside the Torn Apart. If you would have gone directly in order in the progression of their sound, Enemy of the Music Business is what follows Words from the Exit Wound. As far as sound is concerned, they're back at it. And while they still have a little bit of, you know, the Diatribes sound, it's in there. It's just a little bit. It's like peppered in there. They're pretty much gone from it, and everything gets heavy. Constitutional Hell is a grindy banger. Blood Against the Cutting Edge, Fracture and Equation. Like I could name off all the songs that it just sounded good, and this is where they should have been in their career at this point. So cool.
I had this at number 9 as well.
Number 9.
It's
Number
kind of in
9.
the middle. Next on the list, the drumming of that totally sets the song. In my eyes, the drumming has been solid. And this whole album, the drumming's killer. And Napalm Death in general has been fortunate with drummers. Volume of Neglect, that song, it grooves so hard, but it's not like groove. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's totally intense, but the natural groove of it is awesome. It's like the last, that breakdown, the end part of it. It's like, dude, it's like one big ball of kinetic energy just fucking being held in, ready to explode. That's what this song sounds like. Killer song, Necessary Evil. I love that song. Even though of the songs on this album, that's the more, I guess, radio kind of ish.
But it was still like heavy.
It's still heavy as hell.
Yep.
That's one of my favorite songs on this album. But Incinerator, I couldn't help but think every time about Incinerator, the garbage disposal. Incinerator, it works with beats. Incinerator, no coffee ground, please.
I think this album was pretty much them trying to appease no one but themselves.
Yeah,
and
it makes for a good album.
Yeah.
I also put this at number 9. It was a step above the Inside the Torn Aparts, the Words from the Exit Wounds, Diatribes. But once again, I'm not the biggest grind guy. But I did appreciate the fact that the production was a lot better, the musicianship was a lot tighter, and, you know, there were some good song structures. You could definitely tell this album was filled with piss and vinegar.
Oh, yes.
And I did find it funny that a band that likes to write super short songs all the time wrote an 11-minute long song. I thought that was kind of funny. And yeah, this is definitely middle of the road for me. It was good. It had its moments. There were better, but there were worse.
I had it at 13. It's definitely more pissed, and it's definitely faster, but I think they would have figured it out a little better later when albums coming up. So, I mean, I'll revisit it, but yeah, it's just songs there.
Just think of it as like a nasty breakup album.
Yeah.
They had a nasty breakup. You're just pissed.
Maybe
You're just pissed.
I mean, when you call the album "Enemy of the Music Business," like
Maybe I wasn't
like
pissed
okay,
when I was listening to it. I was like, why is he yelling?
Sir, calm down, sir.
Barney,
You're at a 10. We need you at about a 4, okay?
I'll love you if you love me, Barney.
So pretty much they got their swagger back, and they wanted to keep the momentum going. However, tensions once again were mounting, this time with Jesse Pintado, who was kind of growing tired of the band's sound. He wanted to explore some different avenues in terms of metal and such. And actually, Enemy of the Music Business was the last time he was actually on a Napalm Death album. He did not play guitars on the follow-up, which pretty much let Mitch Harris step up and take on all the guitar duties. So they went back with FME and Russell because they really enjoyed working with them. And on October 21st, 2002, they released Order of Bleach. Once again, Spitfire, the wrong label for them, but still, this is very similar to Enemy of the Music Business, though I don't think it sounds as inspired. I had this at number 11. I like this album. It's pretty much a continuation. They're still pissed about the breakup, but hey, I would be too. Jesse's writing on here is very scattershot. He didn't really write very much, so this was all pretty much kind of thrust upon Mitch Harris to do all the guitars, which he did a pretty good job. The production's a little bit muddier this time, but I think it kind of actually works a bit for that.
I think it helps.
Gives them that old vibe back to, I kind of dig it.
But when it came down to like dynamics, there's less songs that stood out for me versus Enemy of the Music Business. But Icing on the Hate, Forced to Fear, Per Capita, Lower Yourself, Blind Servitude, nasty songs. It's just good to hear the viciousness really starting to come back. But yeah, 11, pretty good album.
I had it at number 7. I dug this album, but it's still like middle of the road to me. Icing on the Hate that song is brutal.
It is.
I love that song, and it's just kind of like what you were saying. There's nothing really that stands out about it. It's just a solid album for me through and through. But it's like nothing really stands out about it.
It's kind of like they had the reestablishing act, and they're like, all right, well, we got to at least keep the momentum going.
Yeah, and they did that. They did it well. They kept the momentum going. It's
good.
Got you through.
I had this one last, number 16. Me. If I want to hear fast, pissed off songs, I'll listen to some of the other albums. Nothing really stands out. Icing on the Hate is awesome, and I'm thinking, is it like a sugar icing, like on a hate cake?
I think the cake's made out of
Frosted.
shit and piss is the icing.
Broken glass, nails, hypodermic needles.
Can you turn piss into icing?
Yeah, with a little bit of
Buttercream. Yes.
Buttercream.
We'll link the video below.
Yeah, it's down there.
Yeah.
Take gasoline. Yeah, it's more of the last thing. They're very angry and fast, but the songs were just like, we're pissed. Gotcha. Cool.
I disagree.
Oh.
I like this album. I put this at number 6. Forced to Fear is a really, really, really awesome song. Everyone talked about the Icing on the Hate. I thought that was cool. It wasn't one of my favorites, but I thought it was cool. But the other one, Blows to the Body.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that one.
The only thing that I didn't really like on this song was the whole faux track, the Great Capulator. I just thought that was the most unnecessary thing ever. I'm sure it was trying to be clever and funny, but it was just stupid to me.
There were a lot of bands that did that. Like, we got a hidden track. Like, dude, why? Just make it a track.
Yeah, that was a big thing that bands used to do in the mid '90s, late '90s.
Yeah.
It's like Dead Silence for 7 minutes.
Yeah.
It's come on.
I had this at number 4. I really like this album. Forced to Fear, Lowest Common Denominator, Blows to the Body, Forewarned is Disarmed. It's all about intensity. It's Groove City for sure. The drum work is superb.
Yeah.
It sounds tight and well thought out. I thought it was a great jam.
I will never really have complaints about Danny's drum work in Napalm Death.
Nope.
That dude's a beast.
Yep.
Tighter than
Fantastic.
8 hymens. Ocho hymens.
Ocho.
Ocho Hymens. It's the name of my grindcore band.
Brought it back. You didn't think we could flip it on your head, did you?
So after this album, Embry and Herrera took a little bit of time off, but they took time off doing another project. They formed a crust punk band called Venomous Concept with Kevin Sharp of Brutal Truth and Buzz Osborne of Melvins. and did some recording with them. Now, they came back to record a covers album, which was a follow-up to an EP forever ago that we're not covering because it's just covers. Leaders Not Followers 2. And during this time, they signed with Century Media Records, where they currently are. Again, Spitfire wasn't the best fit for him. You look at the lineup that Spitfire had.
Yeah, dude.
And they stuck out like
Spitfire
a sore thumb.
Records?
Wasn't BLS on Spitfire?
Yeah,
they were for a minute.
Yeah.
Most of the time they had White Lion.
Doro.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, Napalm Death and BLS were like, they're like, what are they doing there?
But they could distribute.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was a thing.
Here, buy this.
Big thing.
It was also during this time that Jesse Pintado officially left the band because he wanted to start something new. And this is the last lineup change. I am so glad. With the newly slimmed down lineup, they went back to the studio once again with Russ Russell because they like this guy, and yeah, he's pretty much the producer on every album after this. A couple other people occasionally will show up, but he's the main guy. And on April 25th, 2005, they released The Code is Red, Long Live the Code. This is my number 6 album. Holy shit. I couldn't believe how intense this album was, like, right out of the gate. The silence is deafening. Not if you're listening to this album, it's because your eardrums are destroyed right away. This album is packed to the brim with pretty much nothing but grind. Like, this is one of the grindiest things they've released yet, and I don't know, maybe a little bit of that carryover from Enemy of the Music Business in terms of just brimming with hatred. Something pissed them off. And really awesome guest stars in here. Jamie Josta, Jeff Walker, and Jello from Dead Kennedys. This is like another reinvigoration for the band. It is top-notch songwriting, but again, grind as hell. So they kind of found this way to make the songs more interesting, more dynamic, but still retain all that, kind of just punk fury. Silence is Deafening, of course, Sold Short, The Great and the Good, and, of course, the title track. These all whoop ass. This entire album is just a non-stop flurry of beatdowns. And it's my number 6.
Not far behind for me. This is my number 7. Once again, I tried to always, with every album, keep in mind that I'm not the biggest grindcore fan, so even though it's present, I still try to keep an open mind. But I thought they did a really good job writing a lot of songs on here. I thought the songs were a little bit more well-constructed than they had been previous albums before this. I think my 2 favorite tracks are Morale and All Hail the Grey Dawn. It's almost like this was a slightly better version to me than Enemies of the Music Business. So this is like, it makes sense. It's that logical next step progression. The band finally put out an album that the progression makes a little bit more sense here.
I did it at number 10. I thought it was missing some of the heft on the mix. Like, I understand when you go back to grind, you don't want something super, compressed or beefy sounding, but, like, for this band, I think that added heft they had with that grind made a bigger punch in the songs. Not that the songs in here were bad. Again, Silence is Deafening, and that little, like, doomy groove at the end is cool. Right You Are is a face ripper. The groove for Climate Controllers is pretty neat, that you even throw in, like, a little bit of off-time stuff. I mean, there were thrashy vibes. I'm not so sure I liked the songs with their guest stars.
I thought those were really good. I don't know. I think they used their guest stars well.
I thought the one with Jello was good, but the one with Jamie Josta, you can kind of hear him if you're really listening for it, but, like, the vocals are doubled there. They're both yelling, and it's not like he gets a verse. So,
well, I mean, hardcore guy, you give him the game vocals.
And I thought the song Morale was kind of weird.
I liked it.
I don't know.
I liked it.
This one just kind of sat middle of the road for me. Again, they're not bad. There is no real bad record except for Diatribes and Inside the Corner Park.
In his opinion.
But, I mean, yeah, it's cool. It just wasn't one of my favorites.
I can see what you're saying about the production. Mostly it's the snare I have an issue with.
Dude, that ringy snare, dude.
Yeah,
like, come on.
It sounds small.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't. But
it sounds like a ringing piccolo snare. Like a metal piccolo snare.
Like you're
ringing
recording a
just
metal
like,
piccolo snare in a concrete building.
Yeah, just like, But,
I had this one at number 5. This album took all the pissed offness from Order of the Leech and Enemy of the Music Business and wrote songs in that way. The songs are much better. They honed in. They're like, yeah, we're mad, but
focused.
Focused.
Mad, but we also can write so
It's like you don't need an M60 to take down the guy. Just
I mean,
mad but cohesive.
It
yeah.
is effective, though.
Yes.
It is.
Yep. I like the little punky elements, which England invented punk. Well, they invented pretty much everything.
invented grind.
Well,
They did, but they needed those 2 albums to get to this one. So
Yeah.
keep writing songs. Shit.
Yeah.
See, and I had this low. I had number 12. So I thought maybe I was just too focused. Like, because you got to think when I came into them, that was like the groove area of them, and this was like way too focused into the grind and dialed in. And like you said, I'm not a huge grindcore fan, and I think this was just too dialed into that. Whereas the other ones, they're kind of fishing around with older ideas and new ideas, and that's why I kind of like those albums a little better. So yeah, 12 is where that is.
So they did not waste much time to get back to the studio once again with Russ Russell. Now, this new album that they were working on would have a very specific theme. They were targeting conservative religious fundamentalism across the board, but definitely kind of focused here in the U.S. And I could definitely see why. Now, unfortunately, during this time that they were working on the album, Jess Pintado died in April of 2006 of liver failure, and it greatly affected the band. He was a hell of a contributor for a number of years. He was a really good friend of Mitch's. So this kind of ended up being like a tribute to him as well. So on September 15th of 2006, they released Smear Campaign. I have this at number 7. It's almost just as good as The Code is Red. It feels, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of the same thing with Enemy of the Music Business and Or the Leech. Like, first one's really good, and then it's like, all right, this is kind of a continuation of it. It's a sequel. It's just slightly not as good, but still great. Some of my favorite tracks, though, Fatalist. Freedom is the Wage of Sin. Shattered Existence has unbelievable riffs on it. The production is just about the same, pretty much from Code is Red. I mean, they got right back to the studio so much. Yeah, I think that Russ didn't even change the settings.
I'm
Like,
sure
just
in that case
get
you
in there and
could
work.
use those settings.
I literally have not touched this mixing board since you left, which was 3 months ago. But, I mean, this song is absolutely whoop-ass. The intensity is there. I think there's a little bit more atmosphere on this one, like a little bit more distance. Annick von Giersbergen from The Gathering and a frequent Devin Townsend collaborator is actually on here doing, like, kind of wailing, clean vocals, I believe on the intro and I think the last track. And it's just kind of an interesting guest star to have on there. It's like, yeah, we need cleans, and, well, Barney doesn't want to do those, and he doesn't sound like a lady. And I think this is a good one because Mitch is settling in as the main guitarist here. He's really getting a feel for it, and there's a lot of really creative riffs on here.
Dude. His riffs on here are nasty.
But yeah, number 7, solid album.
I did it number 6. Solid album. The dissonant chords definitely increase. The heft is still missing from the mix, like it is in The Code is Red. But holy crap, the intensity of these songs are all up in you. Sink Fast and Let Go. That song just spanks you right in the scrotum. The breakdown in Fatalist.
Dude.
Puritanical punishment beating. I mean, that sounds like an actual beating.
Yeah.
By like a guy on PCP.
Persona non grata.
The drum groove in Indifference. It's great. This is a great album. They're definitely honing in on a sound now. Like, you can definitely hear what they, have become today. And this is where they really started to, in my opinion, get more, like, pissed off and like, all right, here we go. So, yeah, number 6.
I put this at number 5. I would say this is the album that took me from a Napalm Death listener to a Napalm Death fan. I thought this album was really good. Right away from Weltschmerz, or however the fuck you say it. Schmiergen. I just thought that was, from that Doomy intro on, I just thought this was a much different record than I'd heard them do before, and I really dug it. The last 3 tracks of this whole album really kicked me in the nuts. They are Deaf and Dumbstruck, Persona non grata, and the title track itself. I thought were great songs. And yeah, I can take the grind now when it has other elements like this in it mixed in with it. So this album was a proper blend that actually made me go, ooh, okay, I enjoy this.
Right.
I had it at number 10. It's a good record. There's just a lot the damn records that they have. Sink Fast, Let Go, that, Fatalist. I mean, yep, I like the grind and the mix and everything like that. It's just, they have so many damn albums. This would be top 5 if they had 5 albums.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I had it at 11. I thought it was better than the last one. Deaf and Dumbstruck, you mentioned that, Joe. That song is kick-ass. When all is said and done, enjoyed that. Shattered Existence, you mentioned that. All the songs that
Work
rock.
Beyond Logic.
And I don't know. I liked it better than the last one, and it's just, like you said, they got a lot of damn albums, and they're good.
So after loads of touring on this one, Embry actually took a little bit of a break to work with Mick Kenny of Anal Nothrak on a project. I think he actually ended up in Anal Nothrak for a little bit, at least in a live capacity. But they got back to the studio in August of 2008, and this time the band was actually part of the production with Russ Russell. And on January 23rd of 2009, they released Time Waits for No Slave. This is my number 1, and I kind of knew it would be. There is something about this album that is so unbelievably heavy. The guitar tone in this album could kill children. It might have. I don't know. It might have. The drums sound unbelievably heavy on this. They fixed any issue I had with the drums sounding thin. Everything about this album is just firing on all cylinders. Everyone is just killing on this. And hooks in brutality, downbeat click. Once you hear that stomping intro riff, it's gonna fuck you up. Fallacy Dominion is just pure explosive hardcore punk. On the Brink of Extinction is a great galloping chugathon. There's so many different kinds of intensity on this. You even have like a lot more of the dissonance. This album is just fucking killer, start to finish. I have loved it since the day it came out, and I've jammed it a lot since the day it came out.
This is my number 2. Holy crap. I love this album. And while I still think the drums are a little thin, they're better than what they were. The song Dictat. Dude, that song.
Great song title.
That song spanks, dude.
Spank the Dictat.
Yeah.
On the brink
Wait a
of
few days.
On the Brink of Extinction, Time Waits for No Slave, the title track just comes out swinging.
No.
Life and Limb, I think, might be one of their heaviest songs.
Yep.
Like, it's definitely in the ranking.
Yes.
This record gives no fucks whatsoever. Not that any of the other albums really did either, but like this is a straight punch to the face. Procrastination on the Empty Vessel. I like the dissonance and the darkness of that track. The breakdown in De-Evolution Ad Nauseum, just cool and stompy. Yeah, I've jammed this record a bunch. If somebody says, "Hey, I want to listen to Napalm Death, but I want something heavy," I'd be like, "Okay, cool."
Literally any
This record.
album, but yeah, this one.
This one, most definitely. So, yeah.
Let's add one. Number 3. This was my number 3 album. Once again, I dig the shit out of this, actually. Life and Limb and Downbeat Click back to back are like is a very highlight part of this album for me. Also, Passive Tense and Larceny of the Heart is damn good. This continued where Smear Campaign left off, and it just got better. So
doubled down.
Number 3 for me all day and twice on Sunday.
Had it at number 6, which in the grand scheme of things is still pretty high up there. It's good shit. It's fast, but he's not blasting the entire time, which is pretty cool.
He's good at it.
Yeah, I got that. The atmospheric shit that they threw in there, everything they said, all the songs.
Mitch's shrill backup vocals too. I don't know. There's something about those that are just. Ugh.
I agree with everything you guys said. That's why it's my number 1.
Woo!
Right?
Woo!
Yeah, on the Brink of Extinction, maybe my favorite Napalm Death song.
Dude, how do you not fall in love with those chugs?
Life and Limb. You guys
Life
mentioned
and
that.
Limb.
Like, Passive Tense, the thrash feel to that is just awesome. I dig it. This album is killer. I mean, this was my favorite Napalm Death album for a long time until, last year. And then it was like, But the only thing on this album, I wish the engineer, and I know this is super pain in the ass and hard to do, but the pick scrapes when he's picking, and I can hear it throughout the whole damn album. It's so when you're recording on guitar, if you're not straight perpendicular to the string when you're picking, if your pick is just tilted like that, you get the scraping effect. And it happens a lot in death metal and stuff where guitarists are really going to town, and the high beats per minute stuff, they tend to torque their pick, and it gets the scrape. And you hear that.
Take note, kids. There may be a test.
Right.
It's like mice chomping or something in my ears when I'm listening to it.
Part of
And
the
Another,
percussive sound.
and it's-
another layer of grit.
and it's something that most people probably don't hear a lot of. And I know as an engineer, it's a pain in the ass because that scrape is hitting a pretty broad spectrum. It's something that if you're not listening for it, you won't hear it. But Time Waits for No Slave, my favorite Napalm Death album by far.
So once again, being Napalm Death, they toured extensively on this album, and actually this was the first time I saw them was when they were touring on this album with The Haunted. Actually, it was years ago in Detroit, and my brother-in-law almost pulled Barney off the stage shaking his hand. Now, they didn't get back to the studio until 2011, once again, working with Russ Russell. This was a longer session, too. They worked in the studio from May through September of 2011 because this album was going to continue kind of pushing themselves creatively. So on February 27, 2012, they released Utilitarian. This one fell a bit for me. This is my number 12.
Wow.
It's definitely a more experimental album, and I mean, they get kind of crazy on here. They have John Zorn, the saxophone player, doing wild sax solos on Everyday Pox. Yeah. It's a very strange album. You also hear the weird cleans that Barney does. The Wolf I Feed. I don't know. It's odd. Like the transitions seem wonky, maybe like a little bit jazzier. There are songs I really like it. I mean, the opening track, Errors and the Signals, is an absolute banger. Fall on Their Swords, Blank Look, About Face, the whole chant in the beginning is like, yeah, it's empowering. But there's a lot of stuff in here that I just feel is just kind of odd. But I still like it. It's just kind of a strange album, and I mean it follows their number one for me, so I mean they really had to outdo themselves to get close to that one.
I did it number 9. It also fell for me. I had this record a lot higher for a long time.
He had this as his number 1 record at one point, and then it went to number 9.
It was so ranking this fucker is was difficult. No, yeah, the heft of the mix returns at least. That is a redeeming factor for this. The songs that are good are great.
Yeah.
Again, Error in the Signals, Protection Racket. The clean singing though. And it's not really singing, I understand. It reminds me of like a mixture between Ozzy Osbourne and Burton C. Bell from Fear Factory.
It's very Burtonish.
It's very Burtonish. And while Burton's not a bad singer, because I love Fear Factory, it just, again, kind of is weird. It's like this is an experimental album this late in the game. And
I mean, what else do they have to prove? That's kind of the thing. But yeah, I get it.
Opposites Repellent. I mean, they're good songs. It's just weird. And that's why it fell a little bit further.
I had this at 10, and I agree with you guys. It's just middle of the road for me. It's just kind of weird. It seems a little disjointed a little bit. The Wolf I Feed, I dig that song a lot. But yeah, going from like, okay, they had 11, and then number 1, and then 10. So at this point, when I was like, I remember listening to this album, and I kind of like was like, all right, well, Napalm Death isn't going to do anything for me anymore. And I didn't even listen to Apex Predator until years later. But the Utilitarian, it's just meh.
I had it at 4 because I'm crazy.
Crazy! Right, crazy ass.
Crazy. I don't know. It is kind of experimental, but they have at this point have a lot of tools in their toolbox. They can throw in the grind. They can throw in the groove. They can throw in weird chanty shit. I think that's what makes it interesting. The songs popped a little bit more because I'm like, never really heard that like that before. Pretty sweet. So yeah, I don't know. It's what can you do?
All I can do is agree with you, sir. This was my number 2. I think the experimentation worked out well.
Maybe I'm not crazy.
I loved a lot of the stuff like Blank Look, About Face.
Yes.
Melodic and heavy and good pacing the whole way through. Fall on Their Sword is a really unique song for them, but I thought it was really awesome.
Thrashy.
Errors in the Signal, it's a little hardcore at first, but there's some really great riffs in there as well. Leper Colony and A Gag Reflex.
Dude, A Gag Reflex is nasty.
I think the creativity pays off for me as a listener, and I like it a lot. So number 2 for me.
Different fleets.
Yeah. I mean, it has its gems, and I kind of liked it when I looked at the cover because it has the yellow and black and white, and it kind of reminded me, I was like, oh, maybe it's like a little nod to Scum.
It was kind of scummy.
Yeah, I mean, you got like corporate guys kicking the shit out of a, look like a homeless dude. That's pretty
Corporate.
scummy. So again, of course, extensive touring because that's what they do. They even toured Nepal for the first time.
Ooh.
Pretty cool.
I want to go to Nepal.
And during this time, they released a cover of the Cardiac's song "To Go Off" in 2014 to raise money for their friend Tim Smith, who was the frontman who had suffered both a heart attack and a stroke. So, good work, guys. Mitch Harris announced that he'd be taking a hiatus due to an illness in the family, but he would work in the studio. So he was replaced with a lot of different guitarists over the years, but Mitch would still do all this awesome guitar work, and they were getting really focused on another visceral album here. Once again, working with Russell at the helm, on January 23rd, 2015, they released Apex Predator / Easy Meat. This is my number 5. Jesus Christ, this album's hostile. And there's something about the production that is even more raw and visceral. I don't know, there's like something almost that kind of harks back to their earlier days, but with like their modern mindset, like, you know, pretty much kind of reapproaching some of that old grind aesthetic, but as like, you know, adults now that have had lots of, you know, time behind the studios and stages. Interesting, clean vocals right away in the opening track, but I don't know, those chants kind of work. When he does those low baritone, I like it. I don't know, it's just interesting.
I don't mind him.
But How the Years Condemn, another great example of catchiness and brutality. Cesspits, Timeless Flogging. This is just a nasty, brooding album, but it has a lot of interesting dynamics throughout it, and I love it.
I do too. I had it 5. Metaphorically Screw You. I dig that song.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's
Use Timeless Flogging. Stunt Your Growth. That song fucking jams, man.
Yeah, that happened
That
to me.
song is fucking awesome. Hierarchy is a cool song, even though I really don't typically like the slower Napalm Death stuff. I like that one. One Eyed. You know, I like this album. I wish I would have listened to it when it came out.
I got it the day it came out because I had a hunch, just because of the cover's brains packaged. Yeah, it's gross. It's awesome.
I also had it at number 5. 555. This is a well done album. Again, the heft. This record is pissed off. I still have a little bit of a takeaway with the cleans, but at this point in the game, I'm going to allow it. You know, if it works for them, fuck it. Smash a single digit, dude. That song smashes like it's supposed to.
Cool video for it.
And I do like the song "Metaphorically Screw You."
Great title.
Not only is that a great title,
title.
but that's just a punch to the taint. The musicianship at this point is on point. Like they're pretty much firing on all cylinders. It's pretty top notch. This record just sounds especially angry for some reason. It just really in your face.
And I like how you were on that. It's like you can hear their older stuff in there. That intensity, but it's way more refined.
It's refined, yeah.
Yeah, and why it's my number 5, you know, and stuff like that.
Just because you get older doesn't mean you have to like completely calm down.
Yeah.
You just find different, you know, ways to show the rage.
Well, and the vocals in Timeless Flogging. Like, he is all over the map.
He
There's
does
so much
not
stuff
give any
going on
fucks
in
about
there.
this.
He doesn't
This
give
is
a shit
weapon.
at all.
This is a weapon.
The riffs and Beyond the Pale, those are real punchers too. Yeah, this was easily top 5, which it is at number 5.
555. I am, when you take 5 and 5 and combine it together, 10.
33. Oh.
Nope. This album was way too much grind, not enough melody, not enough hooks like I had gotten from the previous albums. And while it still had better songs than probably a third of their catalog to me, this really didn't do much for me at all. And number 10 it sits.
I had it number 15. I don't know. I liked the previous album a lot. This was, the songs were just pretty much, I don't know. It didn't grab me. It's angry, of course, but I don't know. There's so many damn albums.
I mean, there is a lot.
I like
The work ethic is great, guys.
Like, I'll listen to the other Fast stuff, or the
Earlier Fast stuff.
the earlier Fast stuff. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Napalm Death's pretty cool.
And Napalm Death is pretty cool.
Napalm Death is pretty cool. Yeah, after doing this, I'm a bigger fan of them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed their stuff, but certainly after listening to all this stuff, the intensity that I have,
Dude,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
like, there's a lot of songs that I got on this for sure.
it's a great soundtrack to put in the car and collect speeding tickets to. Now, they did not return to the studio until 2017, of course, with Russell. This new album was actually rumored to be coming out in 2018, but Barney quickly dismissed that on the internet. Now, Mitch announced he was going to be on the album, but again, was not going to commit to touring. And this album was actually pushed back. They initially were going for, I believe, like 2019, but they wanted to push it back so Napalm Death was free to do Slayer's farewell tour, which they did a fair amount of dates on that. So on September 18th of 2020, they released The Throes of Joy and the Jaws of Defeatism. So we actually reviewed this one, and I was just excited to actually review a Napalm Death album. This is the longest break that they have had between albums too, 5 years, which, they deserve a break. Take the time you need.
Yeah, no shit.
Because
Have a moment.
if it means crafting an album this badass, then do it maybe slightly more often.
And aren't you older now?
This is my number 3. Holy shit, this album is amazing, and literally they pretty much fire off on every point in their career. Like, there's a little bit of every sort of era of Napalm Death on here. You have all the fierce, grindy stuff, of course, The Curse of Being Enthralled, and yes, I have to be a bit of a fan of that title. Contagion, Flexing of the Muscle, but the song Amoral really stood out to me because there's the Killing Joke vibe, that all the way back to the old post-punk stuff that they used to love. There's noise tracks in here, there's Barney chanting on Belly Full of Salt and Spleen, and all of it works. It works as this just interesting piece that kind of just goes across as many extremes as they wanted to touch, and this album is just flat out amazing. And Barney sounds feral on this. I don't understand how a guy that's been doing this so long has managed to sound even more pissed off now than he did when he was a pissed off 20-year-old.
He's cycling now.
I mean, yeah, he must be like storing energy somewhere. It's all the clean living.
Well, he knows how to take care of his voice and sing properly. That's what it is.
Yeah. But yeah, number 3, it's amazing. It was my year and one
Yeah,
of them. It was
yeah.
it was my top 5.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep.
Of course it was gonna be up here.
Yep. I also had it at number 3. I also had it in my top 5. This record is killer. This is where I think bands this late in their career should be. Musically and song structures and whatnot. You don't get that a lot with bands that have been around for a very long time, except the ones that were always really good to begin with, like Napalm Death.
They sound hungry.
They and it's just so intense. Fuck the Factoid.
Yeah, that song is awesome.
Every song is awesome. The mix is great.
Yeah.
The only reason I didn't make it number 1 is because I don't like doing that with new records. Like, your massive career, great record.
I mean,
But I mean,
you can make a case.
yeah, I could make a case, and this is definitely up there. That's all I can say about this. That's all I can say then. If you want to see me get more in depth, go back and watch our review.
Yeah.
I had it at a number 11. I don't know why. I switched it with something else but it is a great record. This is where they should be at this moment in their career.
Yeah.
They're in their probably late 50s. I know.
Mid-50s?
Mid-50s?
Yeah, at least.
somewhere
Something
At
like- I
least.
mean, they're getting old. Settle down.
Or don't.
You're going
Or
to hurt
don't.
yourself.
I don't want them to. I mean, I
Well-
wanna if they keep making records like
Yeah.
this.
Well, but you're old. You're just too old.
You can't take her stuff. She's just too old.
It is a more modern because it came out recently. A mixture of everything that they do. It's got your grind, it's got your weird belly full of salt and spleen type thing, incantation, something or other going on there, British voodoo,
Hoodoo.
You do.
and so does Napalm Death.
I had number 2. It was I love this album. Like when we were talking before this, like Napalm Death, you could take certain songs from each album and kind of put them together and make one really kick-ass album. Well, that's kind of this. This is like your greatest hits, Napalm Death, and being all original stuff. Invigorating Clutch, again, it's a slower song at first, but then once the riff kicks in, it just destroys, man. It hits so hard. Flurry of the Muscle, Amoral, which is a little different from Napalm Death's stuff, but
Yeah.
man, I love that song, and I think it represents it Napalm Death really well. Blissful Myth is another one that sticks out to me. This album's awesome, and I've listened to this a lot since it came out.
For all the praise you guys gave this album, and nobody ranking it number one is shameful, I did rank this number one. I personally believe, as an outsider coming into Napalm Death, that this is the best Napalm Death album for me. It is a perfect blend of every color in their palette, and to finally have more melody and somberness and dissonance along with the heavier parts really hits home for me finally. It's not too much of this ingredient, too much of this. It's a great blend, great mix, great vibe. I don't care if it's the last one or not. I think it's the best one of their catalog. So there, I said it.
Jesus.
I mean,
Jesus.
high marks pretty much
Yeah.
across the board. I mean, they're on a crest of creativity, and I mean, honestly, this is the last one here, but it's certainly not the last one from them. They, in fact, just did a contract extension with Century Media. Barney being very open about he likes working with that label because they allow Napalm Death to be creative and do what they want, and if it's going to be stuff like Throes of Joy, yes,
More of that, please.
I mean, Century Media is a whoop-ass label.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, like...
I was about to say, I like Century Media because they don't bombard your email with a bunch of shit all the time.
Yeah, that is nice of them.
Yep.
But yeah, that is the Napalm Death ranking. This was a lot of fun to go through.
Absolutely.
It was tough.
It's very difficult, dude.
But fun. And I love going back through all this stuff, much like any of these rankings. I love just going through and listening to this and the whole timeline. And, well, we have a nice one lined up for our next one. Miller, what is it?
We're going to do Cannibal Corpse. And if you haven't heard John say this is really hard enough, wait for that one.
He's going to say it every album.
Every album.
I like the one about the dead people.
The one with the brutal killings.
Yeah.
That
Blood
one.
ejaculant.
I like the one that Paul guest starred on.
That's one of the better ones.
This is your moment. You're going to live it down
know.
finally.
It's one of the better ones.
Jesus. That's all right. I got my thing that I get shit for. You got your thing. you
Yep, I get shit for Altars of Madness.
A lot of views on that one, too.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Take her home, Nick.
All right.
And I like Machine Head.
Yeah, so the Cannibal Corpse. Hit subscribe. Hit the notification so you know when we're doing this. Got some other interviews coming up, too.
Absolutely. And we are on Patreon as well, so if you'd like to help us out there will also be a link below down there for that, as well as our giveaway going on once we hit 6,000 subs, which should be happening relatively soon. Thank you, everyone, for subbing us.
Thank you so much.
We
love you guys.
We love you guys.
Absolutely.
We love putting out this stuff. We love the conversations with all you. It's been a blast so far. So, yeah, if you have not gotten on that giveaway, there's a link below. Comment on that video, and you are in. And it's a nice little 4 CD package with some badass shit in it. So with that, we thank you all, and we will catch you later.